the seats here at the front if there's anybody who hasn't got a seat. So I think we're nearly ready to go. So the first thing I want to do is say, Reverend Fathers, ladies and gentlemen, you're all very welcome to the Community Hall here in Butlers Bridge this evening for a very special occasion. The launch of P.J. Downie's book, Butlers Bridge, A History. And those of you who have managed to get your hands on a copy of it so far, it sure is some history. Written and compiled by P.J., a man who is a native of Butlers Bridge. Now, in case that anybody's getting worried about long speeches or anything like that, they all have given me assurances on €50 notes that they will be brief, so there's no need to worry. And might I say just as well before we start that at the end of the formalities there will be a cup of tea and refreshments at the back of the hall, and also that copies of the book will be on sale that side and at that side as well. So, I'd like to introduce our first speaker tonight, Dr. Brendan Scott. Brendan is a native of Belturbet. He and I go back a little bit in history, but we won't talk about that. Brendan is editor of the Breffni Journal. He was formerly research officer at Cavan County Museum. He now lectures at NUI Maynooth, and Brendan has written and edited a number of books and articles dealing with Cavan in the early modern period. And without any further ado, I call on Dr. Brendan Scott to officially launch P.J.'s book. And just to say again for people coming in, there's a row of seats here, free, a few more over here, and one or two scattered in between. So, Dr. Brendan Scott.
Thank you very much, Terry. And thank you for the warm welcome given to a Belturbet man in Butlers Bridge tonight. It's much appreciated. Our place of birth and where we grow up is something which defines us all, I think, for all of our lives. I remember when I was a student in Galway, going to a conference in Maynooth and being referred to there by somebody else as a Galwegian, and I was looking around and who's the Galwegian? And you know, they were referring to me, and I said, no, I'm a Cavan man. And you know, they didn't seem to understand this. And having grown up in Belturbet, and I now live in Leitrim for my sins, I still continue to feel that pull for home very keenly. I always read the Self, not the Leitrim Observer. I'm home a few times a week, catching up on gossip and the local news and what's going on. And when I see Terry Letty here, I remember a time, as he alluded to there, over 20 years ago, when I used to call him Master Letty in the boys' school in Belturbet. In fact, I still find it a bit strange to call him Terry. I think I'm going to get lines or something. I remember the people I sat beside, my friends, the games, the fights, all of the usual things which we remember from our youth. Yes, the pull for home is a very real one, which resonates, I think, within us all. And Butlers Bridge is one of those places which resides in my memory and reminds me very much of when I was younger. In fact, my sister was telling me only a few weeks ago, before I told her that I was involved in this tonight, of how when we were young and we'd be travelling in the back of my dad's car and we'd be going through Butlers Bridge, we would always say hello to the woman on the roof at the Derrigar. We'd always take a little wave and say hello to her. And we'd often spend time in the Derrigar having tea and sandwiches. My sister and brother used to have music lessons, I think, in a place across the road from there. And Butlers Bridge was a place through which I travelled every day when I was a student in St. Hat's. This is before, obviously, the bypass. When we were going to Cavan to do the weekly shop with my parents, to visit my grandfather in St. Phelim's, or to cut the lawn out of Mine Hall where my father was reared. I remember the Barclays getting on the school bus at Anna, Conway's getting on just around the corner, Shannon's and Eddie's and McGarty's getting on at Drumsilla, Sweeney's getting on just further up, Smith's getting on outside Cons, all these people. And for me it was normally a place that you went through Butlers Bridge rather than a destination in itself. But that really, and I'm not just pandering to the crowd, that was my loss. As PJ remarks in the introduction to this fantastic new book that he's just put out, Butler's Bridge really is a very picturesque place. The wonderful Hague Church, fabulous building, the lovely bridge itself, the Derrick Arrow with its trees and falling leaves in autumn. It's a very, very picturesque place. I was in the church down here in Butler's Bridge just before Christmas at a funeral, and I was struck again at the simple beauty and elegance of that church, in which so many generations have worshipped, been baptised, married, and been laid out following death. The full circle of life which remains part and parcel, I think, of life in a country village, where everyone knows your name, as the song goes, and which one of Ireland's great writers, John McGahern, always celebrated in his work, the importance of country and community in our lives. And if we're to understand our present, I think we have to remember our past. Not always an easy thing, particularly in Ireland. The past is a contentious place, full of disagreements, pettiness and spites, but it's also a lovely place to visit. When we remember those who have gone before us, the stories, the people, the places which remain alive in our memories. But these memories have to be written down, or else they'll be forgotten. And that's what PJ has managed so skillfully in this new book, which I have the pleasure of launching here tonight. He has carried out a task which the people of Butler's Bridge have much to be thankful for, as often these jobs, and I speak from experience, can be thankless. The countless hours whiling away in archives, reading old manuscripts or newspapers or books or articles, often in fruitless pursuit of information which isn't even there. It's not working on a building site, but it's not easy work either. But when you see a job completed and you know it's a good one, there is a sense of satisfaction there which is very difficult to replicate, and I hope the PJ is feeling that tonight, because this is a great piece of work. The book, which is a compendium of life on Butler's Bridge over the years, it's a towering achievement, and one which manages to be scholarly in content, yet fresh and chatty in tone, which is a difficult balance to get right. And if you get it, it's great. PJ has carried it out, I think, with aplomb. That it can be dipped in and out of through its various chapters without spoiling its narrative structure and drive is also a great achievement. You can dip in anywhere and pick up the story as you go along, and you can dip in somewhere else and get another bit, or you can just read it through. It's one of those nice books you can do that with. And many books of varying quality, it has to be said, have appeared over the years dealing with the history of our towns, our GAA clubs, our schools, our halls. This one is surely in the top tier, and I'm delighted that it's PJ, a man who wears his learning very lightly, who has written and compiled it. I've been glad to know PJ for some years now, but before I knew him personally, I knew his work, particularly the book of postcards which he compiled about 12 years ago now, I think. It's such a simple idea, but so elegant in its execution, that really every house in the county, I think, should have a copy of that book. In fact, a few years ago when I was still working in Ballyjames Museum, I used that book an awful lot in local history projects. I'd go out to schools and show them a picture of wherever I was in the county, say it was Crosskeys, show them a picture of Crosskeys from 100 years ago from PJ's book, and they showed them a picture of now and asked them to compare and contrast the differences. And a book like PJ's enabled me to do that. PJ's interest, I think, has always been in images. He's a great collector and storer of photographs, and it's no surprise that there are so many in this book. I recently put together a book of photographs from the Farnham estate, and PJ was a great help to me at that time when I was working on that book. He gave me the names and numbers of people who had worked on the estate and might be able to identify people in photographs. And during that time, I was very much struck by his modesty and his humility. He was nearly apologising for giving me this great information, like, I hope you don't mind, Brendan, but here's something that might help you. And I said, why would I mind? You know, this is great stuff. And not only that, but the book he co-edited on the Farnham School as well was a great help, because there was a photograph in that book which was reproduced in my book. And PJ had gathered the names of a lot of people in that photograph, which I would never have gotten. And so again, it improved my book an awful lot. So I was basically stealing off PJ and then passing it on. It was great. As I said a moment ago, the pull for home is always strong. How many small communities now have been ravaged through the recent spectre of emigration? How many of the young people who have left this island will never return home, will instead settle down in countries far away across the globe? How many of them will have children for whom places like Butler's Bridge, Belturbet or Red Hills will just be a name or a place on a map? A book like this helps to keep that link with home alive. Anyone from Butler's Bridge who is currently living abroad will enjoy this book, the photographs and the stories, a little piece of home to keep with them while they're far away from home. A book about Butler's Bridge for the people of Butler's Bridge by a man from Butler's Bridge. Our place of birth and where we grow up is something which defines us all for all of our lives. Yes, the pull for home remains strong and it resonates within us all. It is with great pleasure and a sense of honour that I officially launch Butler's Bridge History by PJ Dunn, and I urge you all to purchase and enjoy this wonderful book. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brendan. And indeed, we appreciate all that praise coming from a Belturbet man. So, thanks again, Brendan. Now, next man I'd like to introduce you to is a man who needs no introduction, and that's the editor of the book, the man himself, PJ Dunn. PJ, as you know, is a native of Butler's Bridge. He grew up here in the village. At a very young age, he honed his football skills not in any fancy field, but on the street. Of course, that was at a time when we used to be able to come to the village and play football on the street because there was so little traffic. PJ was involved in really everything that went on in Butler's Bridge. He played football with the club. He was a member of the successful 1974 team that won the junior championship. He was secretary of the club in the late 70s, and as I said, was involved very much with the football club. In the 70s and the 80s, he became a central part of the Butler's Bridge Dramatic Society, and they put on some wonderful plays on this site but in a slightly different building. Those of you who remember the old hall, it was a very difficult place to perform, but they staged some wonderful plays like A Will and a Woman, Sigh, Juno and Paycock, A Problem Solved. And some of those people who were involved are here tonight. But PJ was one of those people himself. PJ has a deep interest in local history and always had. In 1996, both he and Eugene Riley wrote a wonderful book, Farnham School and Its Community, which some of you, I know, would have read at this stage. Brendan already mentioned there, in the year 2000, PJ produced County Cavan in old picture postcards. And his current book, which he is launching here tonight, he has been working on for the last 4 years. So a lot of time and effort has gone into this. And a night like tonight doesn't happen without a lot of hard work. So now, I will call on the editor and author of the book, Mr. PJ Dunn.
I hardly recognise myself from all the comments I've heard. I was wondering, is it an out-of-body experience I'm having? Somebody else to talk about. So I appreciate all the kind words that have been said out by Brendan and by Terry. Before I get down to it, somebody asked me was I going to make a speech. I don't like making speeches at all. I'd rather spend another 4 years doing this book than spending another 10 minutes here. But before I start my few words, I'd like to thank Brendan for coming here tonight. I'd like to thank Andrew Boylan, the chairman of the Board of Regional Authority. I'd like to thank Kevin Smith for travelling from Dublin. They're both Brendan and Andrew are very much committed Butler's Bridge people, and it's a lot to ask them to come here tonight and say a few words. It does take a lot of preparation and effort to come and do that. So thank you all very much. Jonathan Cherry, who's was to be here tonight, but he rang this evening to say unfortunately he has been detained and he cannot be here this evening. So we have to accept it. Unfortunately, he cannot be here. I was asked to do this book about 4 years ago by the Development Association. When it started on the basis that it would appear on the web only. And after a while we realised that there was an awful lot more material in it than what, you know, I couldn't believe the amount of stuff that was in it. So we decided at that stage to make a book out of it. Now, there was a very good book done in 1988 by Paddy Leddy. Paddy is very modest about the achievement of that, but it actually was a very fine book. And I relied a lot, a very good deal, on that book as a resource for this book. And so when I was asked to do it, I was really honoured to be asked to do it. And it wasn't after that I realised it carried a heavy responsibility. And so I relished it. And when I did the other two books with D.G. Riley and the other with Kieran Parker, it was a collaboration with one other partner in doing the book. It was a joint effort. But in this, you see from the acknowledgements that there's almost 100 people in the village and other places, apart from the different references that were involved in putting this jigsaw together. So it's really not, I don't claim it to be my book, it's a book really of the community. It's everybody else's book, from photographs to anecdotes, all of that. Brendan mentioned earlier about the sense of community there is here. We talk about DNA in a medical sense. There's a DNA nearly in the place where you come from. Like wherever you go and you say, of course we're biased, and from Butler's Bridge, wherever you go, when you say you're from Butler's Bridge, everybody says, oh, that's a beautiful place. It genders a feeling of warmth among people. And that isn't easily earned. It isn't just because it's a beautiful place, although I don't know any other village in the country that's nicer than it, I have to say myself. But it's also because of the people that are from here. So we were always had manners on the football field. We were always we learned an awful lot. We learned a lot through the whole field here. We fought like cats and dogs up here among ourselves, and it was tough going. Skin and hair flying until all hours of the day and night. But when we got together, Kevin will probably knows more about this than I do. When we got together then as a team to go out to play against wherever it might be, it was a real unit. And we all knew each other. We knew the extent to which everybody would push and push and push. So there's a real sense of community and identity with our village. There's a real civic pride in the village as well. All you have to do is look around here. You see a fantastic football grounds, clubhouse, fantastic school, fantastic church. What a beautiful community it's after. I mean, for a one-street town, I know we have a very nice hinterland around us, but for a one-street town we have a marvellous core. And it's not just a core to a town, it's a core to the people. Because we've been lucky down the generations. We've had parents who sacrifice an awful lot for us, especially the mothers. We're now Mother's Day. My goodness, all the sacrifice they had for us down the years. We have teachers who are committed all down the generations. And we've had community leaders who have led us down the generations. And the good news is that this has been renewed all the time. If you look at any of the associations around the village, there's a new crop of new people coming in all the time. I know we're only one community in a community of communities, but we're only here to speak about our village tonight. And we'll be forgiven if we have a little bit of nostalgia and pride in it tonight. So we also were very, Kerry I think you mentioned about plays. This was our Abbey Theatre here, led by Sean McCare, and I see the other co-producer, thank God he's with us and they're alive and well in good form, Gene Cullivan. It was always a great place for crack here in the village. We always had great fun, what Poppy did. It'll be on the football field, in the drama, in the music. There was always a great element of fun and crack. We had bonds and ties were built up in these ways that were unbreakable. And we shared the same background, but everybody shared the same background. There was nobody much more better than anybody else. We were all the same, and we pulled together and we belonged together. Today's generations are now into this texting and all the rest. We didn't do any of the crack at all. If we want to know how it was going on, we were out in the street and we met somebody down at Annie's door, or Barclay's door, or Collins' door, or wherever it was. There was no need for any of these artificial aids at all. So, but having said that, the new generation, they mightn't be communicating the same as we did, but they're still Leddies, they're still Jones, they're still Rileys, they're still the core, they're still our family's children. So I'm proud to belong to that community, and it was a great honour for me to be asked to do this book. And it took me 4 years. Look, we didn't give me 4 years. I left it in the corner for several months on end, and I used to take it up and revisit it, and eventually, in the last 12 months, I put a push on, and we just decided to put it in for once and for all, and here it is tonight. The book itself, between the pages of it, you'll find, I couldn't believe that. We found that there was human activity here in the village going back to the Stone Age. Discovered flint in the building of the bypass. That was about 4,500 BC. So 6,500 years ago, there was people knocking about here. I haven't seen any of our muddy skills, or I haven't seen any of the artists of the bridge, but they were around here. And so then we have ancient monastic settlements here. We had Orley, we had Anna, we had influential families. We had the Bakers over the border in Drumlane, the old land down there at Drumcalcum and at Hackney. We have all of these mentioned here in the book. Father Hugh O'Reilly and those like to come to the Mayor, Pat Donarty on these different families. There was ornamentation found in the Cavan brooch in the island of Rivory some years ago, and it was a 9th century brooch made in silver, and it was so loved by the Queen. I don't know which Queen it was, I think it was Queen Victoria, that they called it the Queen's brooch. But to show that there was a sophistication in design and in creativity among our people going back to the 9th century. So we've had a lot of influences and confluences of things happening in and around our community. We discovered that there was a mill in operation here in 1626, and we know that in 1861 we had a man who owned Derry Gary Inn down here. He was John O'Reilly. He originated from Drumlane, and his remains were buried in Drumlane. And there was over 300 people at his funeral, 300 workers, excuse me, 300 workers at his funeral. So he was a fantastic employer. Now he owned the mill and he owned a whole lot of other things around the village at the time. In the book as well you'll find, I don't want to go on too long about it, but in the book you'll find that there's a map, Taylor and Skinner map from 1777. And this shows the village was on the main Dublin to Inniskillen Road, on the coach road. The coach road was the mail was a big thing in those days, getting the mail from A to B, and they developed the road network based on that urgency to get the mail there as quick as possible. So in our village here, we had a stagecoach going through and coming back. Our villagers in past generations would have witnessed a whole lot of changes down the years as it developed. We came across some very, in the folklore commission, Jean and I prepared that part of the article, where there was, on a lighter note, where there was an Anna Lake monster seen by people in the early 1900s. It was a large white horse that rose up out of the water. Maybe we should publicise it and get a few busloads down to it, calling it the Derry Gary and to wagons. found that the part I enjoyed part of one section of the book very much. That was with on the entertainment in the community. In those days, I spoke with Sean Brogan, I see Sean here tonight, about all the Cayley houses and all of the stories that were told, and all. That's all recorded here. There was Stephen Mulligans and Tommy Mulligans and Donohoe's down here and Hackley. It was a whole lot of different places, so we've recorded a lot of those. The late Vincent Barclay was very generous to me in this whole endeavour. He provided me with a shop counter book from the year 1907. Johnny Barclay owned where Aguilar's pub is now at that time. And in it we find a list of the items that were bought and sold. Oh, sorry, well, obviously they were bought and sold, but they were sold in the shop. And grocery items, there was ladies' wear, men's wear, footwear, drinks, pint of stouting was 7p. I tried last night a pair of corsets. I'm sure you were wearing no girls. One in aprons. Maybe the men were wearing them as well. We were very fortunate as well. I know if Tommy Smith is here tonight, Tommy that had the pub across the side across it. But he was very generous as well. There was an actual print done by the head man, the architect who designed the church. And it's dated and noted that he drew it. And it's dated 1862, and the actual church wasn't open until 1863. But the interesting thing about it is that he must have changed the plans by the time he actually went to build it in 1863, because the 1862 drawing has two arches at the front of the church. And it was hanging in, I see Tommy there now, it was hanging in Tommy's parlour for years. And eventually Tommy presented a copy of it to the museum. And we've reprinted it here tonight. And what's interesting about it as well, it shows the garb that he drew of the citizens outside of the church in 1862. So it's interesting from the double arch, and it's interesting as well from the garb that those were supposedly passing. So there's a lot of different bits and pieces, and I haven't covered an awful lot of stuff. We found as well during the famine that we had the workhouse in Cavan had two houses out here in the village, and there was up to 150 children catered for in the houses. And there was a little twist to it in that there was a little law case then in the middle of it all, because whoever was running the house was claiming for food and for money for children that had passed away. And they had to give back the money for that, but it's all recorded here. And I've given the references. If anybody ever wants to go into any of the references here in more detail, I think and I hope I've given enough references here that anyone wants to do any particular research, any extra research, they can do it. There isn't much else to say. The post office was here in 1835. We had an RIC barracks. We were really self-sufficient in so many ways. And we had the railways here. I see Stadium McGowan here, Stadium's here. We have a photograph of our dad. The railways, even though there wasn't a stop in the village, the railways they actually did try to get a stop here in the village, but they didn't succeed. But it was very important to the village life. There were so many people employed in it, and including Stadium McGowan's father. And we're lucky to have a picture of him here, Harry McGuinness, and in the book tonight. So there's a whole lot of other bits and pieces in it. I hope you find it interesting. I learned an awful lot in the process, and actually when I reflect on it now, it was as hard work, yes. but I'm really honoured to have been given this job to do. And I'd ask you please, if we left anything out of the book, or if we left, if there's any errors or omissions, to please forgive me, because I would never, ever, ever want to offend anybody. So if anybody ever finds that their brother or sister or uncle or aunt or whatever wasn't included in the book, please forgive me. It wouldn't be intentional on my part whatsoever. So all that's left for me to do now is to say thanks to people. And I've thanked an awful lot of people in the book, in the acknowledgements. But there were people that I relied more heavily upon than others. And the first man, where is he? The first man I have to pay compliments to here is Pádraig Gaffney. Now Pádraig, when I started this project, I'm not much good on the computer, as you probably know, but Pádraig was the man who called the house so often and regularly, and we laid it out, and he did an awful lot of the work. And in fact, he found a lot of references to that, via the computer that I couldn't come across, so it was very helpful. So I'd like to give a round of applause to Pádraig. The next man I want to thank is Paddy. Paddy is very modest about his achievement in 1988, about his book, but it actually was a fantastic source of information, and I used it quite a lot, especially with the football and with the co-op movement, and in places where the story was already written, I didn't try to improve it. You know, I wouldn't be the greatest genius in football. So I mean, we had stories in Paddy's book from Hugh Riley and from Colin, the late Colin, Kevin's brother, and we've used those in places where somebody has done the work and done it really well. I've kept it, and what we did was we updated it, and Terry here, our MC tonight, updated the whole lot as regards the achievements of the club in the last couple of decades and development here in Emmett Park. And I'm grateful to both Terry, to both Paddy and to both Terry for their help in this book also. I can't forget my brother Raymond and my brother Philip. Raymond has 2 articles in here in the book, one on the clergymen and the nuns from the district, and Philip did an awful lot of recording in graveyards, museums, wherever I asked him to go, he willingly went, and anything he ever came back with was so accurate. Mary Shane and Mary Shannon, who can't be with us tonight, and her mother, Kathleen Duffy, were an unbelievable source. Kathleen Duffy especially, well not especially, but she was, they were both very good, but Kathleen had great stories about the banshees and about the fairy passes, and we have reference to the banshees and the fairy passes here, and it was fantastic stuff. And unfortunately, Kathleen was not with us. Veronica Shane was also very helpful to me. I want to thank Tommy again, Tommy Smith, for the Hague print, and really the backbone of a lot of stuff came from 3 or 4 other people. Norby Fitzpatrick is here with us tonight from Kinderleg. I don't know how often I call him Norby, either in person or on the phone, and he was always very generous and in giving information and his time, and I know I'm going on too long, so excuse me. Brian Brady, Brian Brady's here from Greenfield. Brian Brady was a fantastic help in preparing the see there, Brian, thank you very much. In a lot of the agricultural and rural life. Eugene Babington Wilson, who's now living in Glenagiri, who came from the main street. The main street, yes. And he had very, very clear memories of the village in the olden times. Sean Brogan was fantastic. Whenever I asked Brandon, thank you, Sean, wonderful stuff I got from Sean. Jean Culver was very good with the folklore stuff. Evelyn Brady was very helpful. And then all the people that are gone silent, people who have passed away. I mentioned Vincent Barkley already, Kathleen Duffy, Lizzie Condell. We did an article on the Ballykinder camp, where a lot of the villagers were interred in 1920 and 21. And I happened to be, I couldn't believe the stuff I remember. I remember Lizzie telling me all the stories about her father was interred in 1920. People were released in June 21. And I nearly wrote the story myself out of stuff that Lizzie, I couldn't believe I remembered myself, that's the stuff that she had told me. And I don't know how Lizzie is dead now, but so we're thanking belatedly, thanking all those people who now passed away. Michael Swords was very helpful to me too. The picture we see in the front of the cover of the book, as I said before, I collect these picture postcards, and a lot of pictures of all the towns and villages in Cavan. It's very confined, not really just a Cavan only, don't go beyond the Cavan borders really. But anyway, I have a few of Butler's Bridge, and this one was taken by his father-in-law, Patrick Brady from out of Mine Hall, who I think did it as a hobby. And when you saw that photograph, I asked Michael for it. Originally, it was all, I'm not good in technical phrases, it was very yellow. But we got it all cleaned up, and it came out very well on the cover. It didn't come out so well on the inside pages, but it came out extraordinarily well on the front cover. And it's taken about 1900. And I really want to thank you, Michael, for that. I'd just like to make one special other mention to the new people who have come to the village, the new families, and who have settled in the village. I know I'm not living here anymore, but I know they would have a very bed welcome. But from my point of view, I want to reiterate that and say how welcome they are. And this will also be, it should be, I hope it will be, kind of a reflection on the community that you've joined. And I hope that the community you've joined is as nice and as pleasant and as good as the community that I was brought up. I'm so proud of our village and all the difference. So I hope they're happy as well. So I know that I've left probably somebody out. The last one says that tonight I got one phone call late in the week from the football club. I know there are many associations who asked, could they help in any way? And we have down in the kitchen there, we have Marion Eddy, Fidel Eddy, and Helen Flynn, we have Tony Smith. We have, I know many people selling the books and organising the whole year. So you might do the prime for the set, but I don't know many people that go on and more. But people are so generous in their spirit. And I want to, lastly, I want to say thank the people who have travelled a long distance here tonight. I see Gerald Gold here from Wicklow. I see my sister here from Navan and others like that. So I used to travel on this. So thank you again, and I hope you all enjoy the movie.
Okay, Peter just wants to make one or two presentations at this stage. Just to note something there, PJ, in your speech, when you were talking about the good manners of the Butler's Bridge players on the football field, Paddy Riley from Beltorwood wasn't too impressed. But your Paddy's a Bridgeman, isn't it? That's what I'm saying, Kevin, he's a Bridgeman, eh? Okay, back over to you, PJ.
Yeah. Excuse me. Just as a as a mark of respect to our senior citizens, I don't like singling out people, but I'd like to ask Norby Fitzpatrick, Sadie McGowan and Rose McGerty to come up and present a copy to them of this book as a special salute.
Okay, thank you very much, PJ. Just to say to the people who are standing there are two chairs, one here and one over here, if there's anybody there would like to sit down. Don't be shy. Up here at the front. One here, one over the side. No takers. Okay, we'll keep going so. Now I want to introduce you to our second last speaker. Again, a man who needs very little introduction. A man from Buckles Bridge here, Mr. Andrew Boylan. Former Fine Gael TD for Cavan Monaghan, current County Councillor, and also current Chairman of the Border Regional Authority. And he's wearing his chain of office here tonight to salute PJ and his work. And of course, since we're talking about history, Andrew's place of residence has a historical connection as well, insofar as that his house was the ancient seat of the O'Reilly family, who owned Derrygara Inn and Derrygara House, and also a mill in the village. So, Andrew, over to you.
PJ, Dr. Brendan Scott, my old friend Kevin Smith, Reverend Father, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here tonight as a local person, but I'm also very proud, being a Buckles Bridge man, to be presently chairman of the Border Regional Authority, comprising the 6 border counties from Donegal to Limerick. And it's particularly pleasing to me to have this opportunity during my term of chairmanship of that authority to be able to come here tonight to pay tribute to one of our own, PJ Dunn. PJ told me some time ago that he was undertaking this task. Now, some time ago, would be 2 or 3 years. Any little snippets of information that I had would be useful. And I have to confess that I have an awful lot to tell him, other than, well, I see no party in Paddygaffney down there, but we remember growing up in the village and we're about the one vintage. And by the way, in passing, I'm delighted to see that only about an hour ago here we had an operation in the village with the and that. Mel TV, I see here too, would be at the same time. And of course we grew up in the village, we were always very proud of our village. But the Dunn family, a brief history, came to live in Buckles Bridge in the early 1950s, which I well remember. And they grew up in the village here, and they were marvellous people, and they spread their wings and moved out. But they never forgot the village that they grew up in. And they always came back when the occasion happened, whether that was a celebration or whether it was a bereavement. There was surely a presence from the Dunn family. And PJ had a particular interest, and his book alone, it is an amazing book. I had expected 150 years of history. Now, I had an opportunity to get the book earlier this evening and glance through it, and I see dates that take us back to 1630. And that is an in-depth research by any yardstick into the history of our local community. And I have no doubt that this book will become a reference book for people with an interest in local history, and it deserves that. And I would suggest, and I'm not being facetious about this, that a copy should be placed in the library in Buckles Bridge School and in the Johnston Library in Farrington. I think that people would take time, the children would learn their history, and we have a proud history. Now, I'm not going through the details, it would take too long. But some things did strike me, just listen to, and the titles of the various chapters certainly make it. They grab your imagination and you don't forget their winter, which of course we will. And I know that these books will be in every household in this village. And people that have come to know us in the village and who have moved on, people who have a connection with the village, will have a keen interest in it. But the buildings, and they're all intact in a different shape, which shows that we're not a wasteful community by any means. I refer to the old creamery, I refer to the barracks, I refer to the mill, and the people here probably don't even know what I'm talking about. But they're all private houses now, renovated and cabinets, everything. So that's marvellous to see that they weren't allowed to go derelict over the hundreds of years in which they have gone out of use. Rightly so, PJ has outlined the GAA and the great role they played here in the village. I wasn't a big footballer myself, but I attended the game. The cooperative movement played a major role. And when we talk about the village, or when we talk about people, the village, yes, of course, it is recognised and standing. Hamlet, as people describe it, beautifully laid out and developed over the years. But the townlands in the hinterland of the village is what forms the community, and all of you are part of that. And looking over the history of the village, I think it would be fair to say, and as we've had it on there, that you've come to live along a peaceful people. Except for one skirmish, and I have it dated here, 1689. There was no major warfare in the village. We're a peace-loving people, and everybody's welcome to come and live with us, and we have a diverse community. Again, PJ, we're deeply indebted. We thank you sincerely. It's a major undertaking. It has been a great success, will be a great success for you, and the effort and time that you put into it, and you yourself have acknowledged the people that were prepared to rack their brain, and indeed, and I'll conclude on this at the risk of losing my €50 note. I sat beside Freddie Kills and Tommy McLaughlin, and already we're remembering what happened back the years and stories that we have heard. So of course it will be due diligence in the village. It will be a group that will hold discussion and maybe an undercurrent of politics as well, and that's what keeps the community alive, but it never came to any serious issues other than that we all got along together. And again, congratulations, PJ. Thank you for this opportunity, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Andrew. You were within the time limit and you don't lose your €50. Final speaker tonight, another man that needs very little introduction, a man who grew up here in the village, and as Andrew said about our last speaker, certainly a man who has never forgotten where he came from. Speaking of course of Kevin Smith, Kevin has always been very involved in everything that has gone on in the village. And although now residing in Dublin, Kevin comes back regularly to Buckley's Bridge, be it for a wedding, or a funeral, or a football, or something to do with dogs, or a host of other reasons. And a man who has a great love for Buckley's Bridge. So without any further ado, Kevin.
These notes are not very well organised, but my biggest problem, Father Tom, my host here, thank you very much for inviting me, and Andy Boylan, I was very jealous of Andy, he always had medals around his neck. I asked him not to mention politics tonight for a good reason. I attacked Benny Reid there from Longford. Benny was right-hand man to Albert Reynolds, and I said, look at the mess I was in now, Benny. So he was very lucky to marry Catherine Keeley. That's what I got to see Benny here, and Mel and more. What I would love, if I could do it, is to have this room motivated or rotated, not rotated would be a bit extreme, rotated and have all the people that I have in my memory come in as I met them over the years. And it's very nostalgic for me to see all the faces Michael O'Reilly had been up, and he's not a Turbo man either. It's not very often. We had a get together for Father Raiden, and it's amazing they have a second get together of the community to remember and celebrate a great occasion. And this is a magnificent occasion. PJ, you have done something which the people of Butler's Bridge have to be very thankful for and have to be very proud. It's a fabulous book. I expected to get something less than 400 pages, and when I heard it mentioned them 4,500 years ago, I said I must have missed most of the pages, but to go back, as Andy said, to 16 something, it's unbelievable research. And I'd have to say, this is the last thing I'll say about Andy, but he had a very sheltered existence in Derrygarrow, because there has been a few rows up here since 1689. But we never remember the rows. I have a friend, and he comes back from playing cards. He's involved in grounds and football and hurling and stuff, and he was down the country, mostly to Bariri direction. And anytime he comes back and he's played cards, he has a story about somebody that started a row. And I said to him one day, did you ever think that you might have had the start of this? And Miles's bottom, there was always a row down there. And it never occurred to anybody in Butler's Bridge that we might have been responsible. Which is a bit peculiar, but I think that's maybe part of the site that has brought us to where we are. We believe we were right. We had a marvellous community. Thankfully, there's still a marvellous community in Butler's Bridge, and I think that the people that come in, I'm the product of two settlers who came to Butler's Bridge in 1936. I think that the people who come in give it new blood, they give it strength, and they are very, very much accepted. And I think maybe the sort of openness and the hospitality and the natural sort of welcome that people in Butler's Bridge give to people who join the community is the secret of the lifeblood of the community here. And that's something that I would hope and promise continue. One great example, I think, was a man called Theo. He lived in Barclay's house, and he had a great funeral in Butler's Bridge. The man was a Dutchman, he had no connections, his family came over, they were amazed with the turnout he got and the affection people had for him. And I think that in itself was a great sort of proof that there is a genuine friendship in the hearts of the people. It's no good having it on the outside, you must have it in your heart. And I don't want to get too philosophical about the thing, but a guy said to me one time I was down, travelling down in Tipperary or in Limerick, I don't know where, up at the Galtee Mountains, and it was a beautiful day, and I was sort of remarking about this marvellous sight. The sun was a winter sun, and it was sort of brilliant, broken up on the mountain, and I said to him, isn't that a fantastic sight? And he said, well, you should realise that that's part of your existence. So I got a little bit hard to gather what he was saying to me, but it's your experiences and the things you experience in life. Butler's Bridge has been for me a fantastic place to be born, a fantastic place to have been brought up, a fantastic place to come back to, and naturally, and as every other Butler's Bridge man is very, very proud of it. I would have to say there's a sadness, of course, that we can't have everybody we want present tonight, but I think that one of the lines, I didn't read much of the book, I ate too much before I came down, and I looked at Tommy, so I couldn't very well read too much of the book, but there's one line that I saw on the foreword, and PJ said, I'm not putting RIP behind the name of anybody and mentioned it in the book. And I think that's marvellous, because I don't think anybody's dead that I knew on Butler's Bridge. I think we're all very much alive, they're memories that were part of our existence and they're still with us. So we're here tonight to celebrate all the generations, all the people that from whatever you said, 16 something, that have come here. The community has survived. We had a great talent in the village always. We had great dancers, great singers, great musicians. There were families like my own that nobody could sing. The Barclay weren't great at it either. But Gabriel used to surprise us at Christmas. He used to stand up on a chair in our kitchen and I couldn't get rid of him. He had a mentally nobody knew very well. Because obviously my father wasn't walking the drink, it was good. But the last time I started talking in this hall, a woman from Florida had to tell me that she wanted to catch a bus. So I don't know who Terry has ready tonight. PJ's parents would have been Joe and Veronica, and his mother unfortunately died at a young age, and but they would be very proud. His father was very, we call him a deep thinker. Joe was a very solid man, and Veronica and himself gave rise to what was a big bonus for Butler's Bridge in moving here and in their family being involved in the community. I would be very friendly with all of them, the 3 girls and the 4 boys. I hope I got that count right. But what made me realise, thinking about the Dunn family and then thinking about other families in the village, is how different everybody in the family were. Mick, Franz and Willie apart, they were very, very alike. They were sort of exact twins, and even before, while they were still around in later years, I was still making mistakes when I met Willie outside the church one and I thought I was talking to Mick. So, but aside from that, I was thinking about the Browns and the Fitzpatricks, the Norby's crew, and the Farrells. You go right through all these families, and it's amazing how much of an individual each person in that family was. There was very, the common denominator, they were all very, very talented, they were all very individualistic, and there was something about it, whether it was where we were located. We were sort of a suburb, I suppose, of Cavan and far enough away not to be absorbed into it. We were on the road to the border, which was a great source of income and activity for a lot of people, and there were great characters along it. Denny O'Brien and James Brady again was Cross, and all those guys. Charlie Eddy used to bring them into the pub and to be trying to rob Charlie playing cards, but I think he was robbing them some other way. Carl wasn't too perturbed when I told him about it. But there was a great vibrancy and a great vivacity always in the village, and I remember Tommy Brown coming with a little briefcase, or it wasn't a briefcase, a little case, he called it his portmanteau. I hadn't, not alone had I not seen anything like it, but I hadn't heard anything like it. And he had embrocation, which nobody else had before. And there was always these innovations, things that, and then you had, I remember Sean O'Hare, he Catty here, and I remember Sean one time organised Dave Dixon and his 13-piece orchestra. They were all wearing white jackets, and they played in the hall here, the old hall. I don't think there was much space for anybody else. And I'm not so sure they ever got paid. But there was this thing of always having the best, and we just felt at that stage. And I also recall, I was thinking of different things that happened, unusual things. I don't want to use my 50 euro here, but I was thinking of different things that happened and unusual events. And things things like Margaret Barry, who became an internationally famous ballad singer afterwards, singing on the street, collecting money and singing on the Bridge Street. You remember that, Bill, you don't? It used to come and be a fella, you'd be trying to beat a boy leg, and next thing you'd hear a fella singing Joseph Locker's number out on the main street, collecting money. I also remember a fella coming with a bag load, one of those big brown net bags that you'd have spuds in or whatever. And he was full of white loaves. This was around the end of the war. And everybody was out mad buying the loaf. I don't know how the loaf cost, but I'd say that they weren't as dear as the costs. Anyway. And I never knew that a kosher was that you get 3 pints for a kosher. That's why nobody held up too tight. That nobody would worry too much. As Peter said, sex wasn't. The missionary used to come every year, and he had a great insight into hell, and nobody bothered about sex. They were straight there if you even thought about it. It was good for the pub trade, the lads all kind. Anyway, it was a great time. I think the location had a lot to do with it. I think that when you came to the V here on the village at the time, you went right for Monaghan, you went left for Manna. And there was a lot of activity coming. The bus stopped 2 or 3 times a day on the Diamond. People would go on riding as far as Swaddling Bar. I don't know how far the bus went, maybe buses going to as far as maybe someone on the lock there, they weren't too full, they never got filled up at that from Buckles Bridge. But it was a particular activity, and then you had the town, and we had the association. You had 2 colleges, you had Loretto and you had St. Pat's. You had 3 Church of Ireland communities surrounding the village. Probably I did say to PJ, one of the regrets I have about the society that I grew up in was the fact that you had this religious divide, which I don't think serves either church too well. And I think myself that was a divisive factor in our society. They were happily united in our pub at O'Connell. Willie Hewitt used to entertain and take on all the smart guys, and I think came out on top most of the time. But it was something that probably, I know that God wants everybody to be right all the time, but if the 2 churches can't sort themselves out, then I don't think either of them are going to get a great reward from the man that they both came at the fore. That's all I'd say about that. And I'm not criticising the fellow, but it is. I think we can be as well just the cornerstones Christians and get on with it. That said, I say that because I would have a lot of friends and a lot of people in the 3 communities, the Joneses, the Condells, we've got Conlons, different people, even Jackie Cole and the fellow. One little statistic about Buckles Bridge and about religion generally and that sort of stuff. People don't realise that in 1948, 47 around here, there was an election, and J.C. Cole, who lived 2 miles from the village down the Cloverhill Road, polled 6,000 first preference votes standing as an independent unionist. That's something that very few counties would understand in what would be a very predominantly Republican county. And communities, there were 4 Protestant families living in the village when I grew up, and unfortunately they all disappeared. I think it's not a healthy thing for any community not to be multi-denominational, or at least to have space for the other views. Anyway, that's a serious thing. It's seeing that we're down to 16% on the Fianna Fáil vote. I have to go on to a different kick now. Deviate the mind a bit, right? Anyway, I just wanted to say that because I've drifted into the category of fellow in the church to say there's no old people here anymore. I'm getting to the station, and I think myself it's like the river. I was trying to get a sort of a hanger or something to hang on, an idea I had about the Butlers Bridge community as I saw it. I mean, I relive all the things that happened in my youth around Butlers Bridge. One man that I have to mention, everybody knows that he was my Aristotle and Plato, or John Eddie Fitch, and John Edward Fitzpatrick, who would be Norby's father. And he was a man that handed down a great tradition, and at a time when there was no television and no great media influence, the old songs were what passed on, a lot of the spirit kept Ireland going. And Giannetti was one of these people that passed that on. And I got great pleasure and great knowledge from the man. He christened me Aaron Moore, and I only found that out when he was buried. But I thought it was a great tribute from a man that I really had the greatest respect for. When Norby came in tonight, I thought to myself, this is the Prime Minister of England. I never saw the man looking as well. I'm delighted to see you, Norby. Anyway, I'll finish up and try and save my £50 note. I was going to say there that it's a bit like the river that flows past the church, and the river are in the photograph on the front of this book. And there are two things that have remained constant. And the big thing about the river is that it's different water that goes past every minute. And I think there's a revolving door. We get a slot. Some of us get a longer one than others. Some of us get less hassle in the slot. But I think Butlers Bridge is a rolling ball. And tonight it has got a great tribute paid to it. This is a book that will be a reference book. It's a very in-depth work. PJ Dunn, having taken on the task, has put a lot of work into it. And he's produced a book of depth and a book which records our history and the history of our village and the people in the village, and we're all very much indebted to him, and I thank you very much on behalf of everybody.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for your thoughts and memories. I knew there was no point in threatening you with a €50 note. You'll be glad to know the formalities are almost over. Just to say that in a few minutes' time, light refreshments will be served down there at the back. And I just want to thank Barry McGowan there and Tony Smith in the kitchen as well, that PJ accidentally omitted there when he was thanking the people in the kitchen. Can I thank everybody for coming? PJ is absolutely delighted with the great turnout here tonight, and thank you all for that. And just to say that books will be on sale down here at the back, over here at the back, and if you'd like to have your book signed, PJ will be signing copies of it up here at the front. The book will also be available later on tonight in Commons Bar and Lounge. It will be available in Fiennes' shop in the village, in Brian McEntee's Butchers here in the village, in Crannog Bookshop in Cavan, and also in Easton's in Cavan. And again, like the other speakers, I encourage everybody to buy a copy of it, because as they say about photographs, precious today and priceless tomorrow. And that will fall into that category, because there's an amount of stuff out.
Just want to thank everybody again. Thank everybody again for the kind words, and a really special thanks to Terry for conducting the proceedings this evening.
That's the end of the formalities now. It's over to buying time now, and eating time and drinking time down in the back. There's tea and buns there, and as I said, each of you up here at the front, if anybody wants to copy their book signed. Thank you all again.